Welcome back to the panel discussion, The Digital Agency, How CIOs Are Marrying Analytics and Applications, sponsored by New Relic on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are Mark Schwartz, the Chief Information Officer of the Citizenship and Immigration Services at the Homeland Security Department, and Joe Welsh, the Director of Public Sector Sales for New Relic. Now, before break, we're kind of setting the tone a little bit, understanding the topic from a citizen services perspective, understanding where agencies can go to really take advantage of the new tools, the analytics. We ended up with a little bit about cloud, and let's just jump into that. Joe, you mentioned the fact that agencies shouldn't be scared of the cloud. Mark, your agency is a perfect example of an agency that's definitely not scared of cloud. Discuss a little bit how you're using cloud to address this citizen services issue as well as the data analytics issue.
I think I mentioned before that we're trying to shrink our lead times in getting things done. That's really important. I can't stress that enough. The quicker we can get product and features, capabilities in front of users and have them start using them, the quicker we get value out of them, but also the quicker we get feedback and we can adjust course and make sure that we're doing what the agency really needs. So the cloud is an important part of that. The cloud is something that shrinks our timeframes for delivery considerably. In the public cloud, we can spin up new server in seconds or less than a second even. We can set things up so that servers get created automatically when load increases on them. We can use a continuous delivery pipeline, a method of deploying software automatically that just takes minutes for changes to make their way into the production environment for people to use. So I view the cloud primarily as a way of speeding up delivery and letting us do quick experiments to see what works, get feedback from users, and incorporate the feedback into what we're doing.
Joe, let me turn to you a little bit. When you talk to your clients, when they're looking at cloud, where does that play to move them towards that customer service, the customer experience, and then also, obviously, you're going to layer on the analytics piece?
Right, absolutely. So what I've found from many customers is just the fear of unknown with the cloud. The reality is the question, especially within government, turns to security usually very quickly. And the reality is that, being afraid of the cloud and the security risks don't outweigh because there's really not nearly as many risks as most folks think. And the reality is that, the good outweighs the bad many fold. So, making a move to the cloud not only, helps agencies become more efficient, but it also helps them save a tremendous amount of money, right? You're not having all those storage costs that I'm sure, large agencies like CIS or DHS as a whole, probably incur. And, that would be a nice quick way to basically cut the bottom line.
And I think it's interesting because so many times when you talk cloud and you talk this technology, people look to the cost savings, but it's also the cloud enables, as you can talk to probably, Joe, a little bit about making changes quickly, as Mark brought up, but also, oh, look, the customer wants this. Right. We know that because our data tells us this, right. And now let's make that change.
And that's one of the beauties of New Relic, right? So, from a cost standpoint, you want to be able to obviously spend money where you need it the most. And the beauty of analytics is it helps you you're not guessing. You're not pulling needles from a haystack. The reality is it's giving you real-time feedback on areas that either you need to spend more time, more money, better technology from a system standpoint, or less, right? So it enables you, application performance management as a whole, or analytics as a whole. Really, the key is that you're understanding what your systems are doing, you're understanding what data is out there and how it's being pushed through the pipe, so to speak.
Mark, let me turn to you, because one thing that you guys do around cloud, but also related, is the data analytics, continuous delivery to really meet citizen services. Are there tools, are there different platforms you guys are using to kind of get this moving, to ensure you're understanding the data and then making use of the data?
I don't think there's anything that can ensure that we're understanding the data. Let me try to explain why the data is so important to us. In our new way of delivering software, let's compare it to the old way, the waterfall, heavily plan-driven approach.
The much cursed waterfall approach.
The much cursed waterfall approach, precisely. In that environment, you have a project to deliver a piece of software, let's say, and so you have development teams that work, and they finish when they deliver the software. Pretty much, the project is considered over at that point. With the DevOps approach, the continuous delivery approach, what we're doing is delivering small pieces of software and then getting feedback on how that software performs, and going back and making more changes and adding incrementally. So with the DevOps approaches, we're sort of broadening the value stream, if you think about it. It's not, the project doesn't end when something is delivered. The project continues on to seeing how that thing performs and how people use it and how well that's working and what we need to adjust to make it work better. So being able to get analytics and data about how the system is performing in production is a critical piece of this. Let me give you another way of thinking about it, another reason why data is so important. We're trying to make our citizen services very usable. We think a lot about usability. We think a lot about how users work with the software. And what you often find, I think everybody's probably seen this, or everybody in the software development world, you have a lot of people with a lot of opinions on what is going to work. Everybody thinks they know what will be a friendly user interface. And you can have arguments, going on and on about what is going to be most effective for users. Our approach these days is let's try something and see. If we have two possible approaches, we might do A/B testing, put both versions out for people to use, and then measure how effective each version is and make a decision that way. So it gets you over this problem of everybody knowing what is going to be effective and having a different view and arguing. Let's just go straight to the data and see what works.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that's actually one of the things I always like to lead with my customers is, understanding your data, the core of that, what you can gain from it is massive, right? The reality is that from an analytics standpoint, being able to, as I've mentioned before, place your bets and spend funds in this case to the appropriate areas is huge, right? I mean, that's what we're all trying to do. And one of the things I usually lead with customers is, hey, New Relic's a company that can greatly enhance and help your agency. Try it. Here, we offer a great 15-day trial. And what I find most of the time, because it's easy to install and uplift, and immediately you're getting data. And it's an incredible thing. People all of a sudden can see what's going on behind the scenes. And they can look at it from their mobile device if they're home, if they're not even at work, right? The mobility factor comes into play. And they realize that all of a sudden they've lived without this information their whole life, but now they can't go without it. And that's the beauty of, analytics, and one of the core reasons why I came over to start out this government business for New Relic. It's fascinating to me.
Mark brings up a great point, because I think we experience this in the world of journalism. You think your gut tells you something, but really in the end,
right.
The data is
right. It doesn't lie.
It doesn't lie.
It really doesn't.
Do you find that that's what the reaction from your customers is once they start looking at the data, go, oh, we were wrong, or we were only partially right?
It's interesting. Like I had mentioned earlier, sometimes what they think is the core problem isn't the problem at all. And an area that they think, oh, well, that's always been running smoothly, isn't.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you're getting real-time information, and you're making great decisions based on that information. Whereas before, I don't know what they did before. I mean, Mark, maybe because I'm not an engineer.
What did you do before?
I don't want to talk about it, really.
Well, I think a lot of it so much is gut related. You think, well, I've been in the community, I know the community, I've talked to people in the community, so this is the way people think in the community. And then the data says, well, actually they think differently. I mean, where does the data go? I mean, you get all these great tools and you can put a dashboard and I'm sure they go all the way from the top, the secretary or the deputy secretary, all the way down to the mission folks, all the way down to the field workers. From Mark, your perspective, how do you make sure the right people get the right data and what data are they getting?
Well, we try to collect the data with the use in mind. We decide what to collect based on what decisions we're going to need to make. I mentioned before the importance of being able to answer to oversight bodies and to the public in the government. Well, having actual data, that's what we need, right? It's no longer about, well, we decided to do X because we thought it was the best idea. Now we have so much more data that we can point to and say, this was our decision, here's why it was justified, here's what we were thinking about.
It's a much better way to do business, right? It's funny because it's one of those things, like, as I mentioned before, many customers are like, we love your product, we love, the analytics piece. How did we live with this? Previous? How did we live without it previously? I mean, one of the things I, always hear from customers is, many times they'll say, well, I just don't want to, on my watch, I don't want to be on the nightly news, because usually, unfortunately, it's not necessarily a good thing if you aren't. I'd like to see the news be more positive, right? But it is what it is, right? People want to tune into hearing, what interests them, and sometimes that's not always positive. But being able to make those educated decisions based on the information you're receiving from technologies like New Relic, you're not going to be able to go back from that. People aren't going to step away from that now. They're only going to move forward.
As a member of that news organization, I like to say we're always looking for positive stories. Joe, talk a little bit about what some other maybe clients are telling you, and maybe I know maybe you can't get specific, but maybe some experiences that you guys have had at New Relic where the federal clients or state and local clients have used the data and changed something for the better. Do you have anything comes to mind?
Well, I have one example. You'll probably figure out the agency, but as you know, during the Christmas season a few months ago, everybody and their uncle wanted a drone. Every kid, every adult, every child, boy or girl, right? The drone thing's pretty cool. We helped a certain agency because if you know that certain agency, they had to register their drones if they went above, I forget, 2,500 feet. That's a guess. I think it was something like that. And you had to register with that said agency that your drone was now filed in
some big
database, right? Interestingly enough, the gentleman from that agency was in a panic that his Christmas, because the deadline was Christmas Eve at 12 o'clock. And the interesting thing is, he thought that the holidays were going to be ruined. But with the help of technologies like New Relic, he was able to monitor his systems and to see that the insurgence of people going on and registering and being able to see the load of his systems were okay. From a mobile device, as an example, gave him a nicer holiday.
and that's it's things like that people don't maybe recognize. I think USCIS probably has the same issues when you have certain times of the year where more people are coming into the country, or when you have peaks and valleys in your systems. I mean, do you find that knowing the data is telling you now when maybe you'll need more server capacity, as an example? Yes.
It also lets us see if we're making changes to the system that are going to affect the capacity we need. So once we have a baseline, this is what it looks like in production, this is how fast things happen. Every time we make a small change to the system, we can see if it has an effect on that baseline. And a small slowdown in how something works might not matter at the moment, but we know when more people are using the system, it's going to cause problems. So we can get out ahead of potential performance problems that way. We can see, oh, the change we just made must have caused performance to slow down by this small amount. We know what it is that caused the slowdown, and we can immediately address it so that we don't have problems when the load increases later.
Is this? Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and that's, something that I'm glad you brought up because, how important is that to business? And, there's an agency that I was talking to just last week, and it was fascinating. They have to monitor when folks buy and register guns. And interestingly enough, they have a massive spike when people are registering during Valentine's Day. Interestingly enough, I didn't know that. Mother's Day and other sort of love holidays. They get this insurgence of folks going online or going in physically buying and registering guns. And hopefully we're going to help them monitor those spikes, right? Because it doesn't have to be about that. It can be anything. Whatever your mission is, you're going to have highs and lows. And you want to be able to monitor your systems so they're not crashing on the highs, right? And the lows, maybe you adjust them for that period as well.
And I think a lot of agencies follow that same kind of peaks and valleys in terms of use. And I think to be able to monitor that using the data to understand when that peak or valley is happening is so important to the customer service angle, which ties us back to the beginning. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we can talk more about customer service analytics. You're listening to the panel discussion, the Digital Agency, How CIOs Are Marrying Analytics and Applications, sponsored by New Relic on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.